living the legacy of love.
So hello and welcome to this webinar on the Living the Legacy of Love topic. And we're very privileged and honoured to be able to connect with our brother Charlie all the way in Australia. My name is Minol and I'm one of the many people who have been working on this Living the Legacy of Love project for the last few months, and felt very honoured and very touched to have been asked to be part of it. And it really has been such a beautiful opportunity to dive into the sea and the ocean of footage that we have of our ancestor souls from way back when, some from recent times, but also to hear the stories come up from our seniors all around the world as well. And I've been in Ghana for many years, since I was 5 years old, and I'm now in my 30s, and I'm a professional actor. But really, it's so amazing to be able to connect with the Brahmin family in this way. And along with me is Benita, who's based in Leicester, and I'll hand over to Benita and she can introduce herself before we go into speaking with Bro Charlie.
Om Shanti everyone, and thank you Minol for that wonderful introduction. So I'm Benita and I'm from Leicester in the United Kingdom, and I've been in Ghana for around 15 to 20 years, so since I was really that small, and by profession I am a commercial property solicitor. So it's been a true honour to be part of this wonderful legacy team, and there's a whole host of us from all over the world, from India, Dubai, America, Iceland, and the list really is endless. And it's been so fantastic working with such a team where everyone is always so willing to help and so supportive and just always there. Now, one other thing that I found is that the Brahmin family is full of gifts and talents, all given by Baba. Now, sometimes I feel like we don't actually share these gifts, and I feel like now it's so important to do that for the world, because really it's truly important with so many people suffering and struggling with the whole crisis that's happening in the world. So turning to the project itself, my first question to Charlie Pai is with regards to the title of the topic, Living the Legacy of Love. Now, I wanted to ask you, Charlie Pai, when you actually listen to the title, what kind of emotions, what kind of feelings, and are there any particular experiences that this particular title invokes in you?
Thank you so much, Manal and Benita. It's so lovely to be with you, and multi-million congratulations to you and all the team, because I think this whole project has grabbed the hearts of the whole divine family. And to me, living the legacy of love goes to the heart of our life with Baba and this yagya. I feel this yagya is built on love, and that is why no matter what happens, it just keeps growing and developing. And in a way, my feeling is that Shiv Baba is the unlimited ocean of love. He comes and fills Brahma Baba with that love. And then Shiv Baba and Brahma Baba fill the daddies with that quality of love. And then they've filled all of us with that quality of love too. So it's like a legacy that's been handed down. And I really do feel that as our daddies aren't physically present, but present in our hearts and minds, it's really like our duty to hold that bhavna of that quality of love, that purity of love that was created. And you know, the way that I feel, what really touched me was that maybe 2 years ago, I went to Karachi. I spent a couple of days in Karachi, and I spent time in Brahma Baba's home, which was unbelievably magical. But then I spent some hours in Kunj Bhavan, where for 14 years, this little community just lived in this canopy of love, that's a purity of love that the world hasn't seen for a whole cycle. And it really just filled something so deeply in me. I could feel the atmosphere of love. I could feel the power of belonging that was created. And it just actually really filled in me why this yagya is so powerful, because at each step, Baba has sort of pulled our hearts with this purity of love, this true love. It's like a deep memory inside all of us. And once we taste it, I feel the sort of this profound healing begins to take place inside the soul. And that's why I really feel, it's really all of our duty to hold this legacy of this divine love, this true love, this pure love that really this yagya has been built on since the 1930s. And we have to sustain that, because that's really the power that has driven the yagya from the beginning.
So, Charlie Boy, that's wonderful to hear regarding your trip to Karachi, and it sounds like it was so powerful. How do you feel that others who haven't physically been to Karachi, or even others who may not have been to Madhaban, how do you feel that they can share similar experiences and get that power that you seem to have got when you visited Karachi?
Benita, I feel that all of us, this is our inheritance. And there's no doubt that the daddies lived in that atmosphere for 14 years. But I feel that that is still available for all of us. And I think that really, for me, the way I experience that quality of love now is that I really try to taste it and feel it. I think many of us have the belief that God is the ocean of love. And that belief even sustains us, but actually to experience it is really what I feel our journey is, to transform the knowing and the believing into the experiencing. And I remember in 1985, all the double foreigners met Bap Dada in Om Shanti Bhavan. And Bap Dada created the realization course. And this was a big turning point in my Brahman journey, because Baba said to the double foreigners, you know the knowledge, you believe the knowledge, you teach the knowledge, but you don't experience the knowledge. And Baba said that every point of knowledge, every point of truth has an associated experience. And I think that's our journey to unpack, because we know it in our intellect, and we have an education that educates our intellect, but we've got to educate my heart as well. And in a sense, my heart, my intellect recognizes Baba. The next step is for my heart to recognize that no one will love me like Baba. And the purity of love that Baba offers is really what we've been searching for half a cycle. This is really our journey. And whether we're in the beginning of the yagya or even now, even though Avyak Bap Dada is not coming, what I do, and I often share, I feel to sit at Amrit Vela and become the seed, the point, completely detached, and sit in front of your lover, Shiv Baba, the eternal lover, the one that's, the really I've searched for, and open my heart and allow myself to be completely loved. And if I can't feel that, not to panic, not to freak out, but to just really begin to see what is it in me blocking this purity of love. And almost always, it's my sense of unworthiness. It's my sense of not being good enough. It's my sense of inferiority. It's my sense of lack of self-respect, which I've inherited through my bhakti. This is the journey to remove that barrier and allow myself to drink the ocean of love. And I often share my first meeting with Baba because that really gave me an insight how to do this in a sense. I was just a few months in Gyan, and I sat in front of Baba in the history hall. There was probably 50 people in the meeting. And Baba gave me drishti, and my sense was that Baba's drishti went so deep into the soul, you know. It's almost like Baba scanned the memory track of the soul. But his drishti fell on the original me, the elevated me, the pure me. And I began to see the difference that Baba saw me as such an elevated being, and I was seeing myself as such a limited being. And I realized that that's what I have to step out of. I have to step into God's vision. And that's what the daddies did. The daddies had the courage to step out of this identification with this limited me, this inferior me, and really step into God's vision and accept his love without all the feelings. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I am worthy. God says I'm worthy. I need the wisdom to step into that place and accept that love. And that's how I feel all of us can still experience that original purity of love that Shiv Baba offered even at the beginning of the yajna.
Wow. It's almost as if, well, it does really feel like we're experiencing the love that you're talking about as you speak. Don't you think, Benita?
I absolutely agree. I really, really felt it there. Thank you so much, Charlie Pie.
I have a question for you, Charlie Bai, on the basis of what you just said, and it's about the impact of the love that we experience from Baba, because obviously we all have very different experiences of Baba's love. Some of us, Baba says, "I give you all equally, but you will take according to your capacity." And I think that's a conversation I've been having for many years with many BKs. And it's really interesting to hear everyone's perspective on it. But it'll be interesting to hear what your experience is in regards to how Baba's love has changed you and has really impacted you from the moment you had that first experience of Baba, but up until now, and times of hardship, and times of difficulty, maybe even in times of having low self-esteem at times, feeling discouraged by your efforts, if you've ever had those moments. It'd be interesting to hear if there's I don't know if there's a story that you can tell us, or something that you can say, yeah, that was definitely Baba's love. Maybe you didn't expect it.
Manal, I was just sharing my first meeting with Baba. You can imagine I was 22 years old, just a few months in Gyan. I sat in front of Bab Dada in the history hall, and I was describing how that drishti fell on a part of me that had gone asleep. And it shifted something in me. Something in me that night shifted. And I think it's not that I just stepped back into self-respect, but it opened the door to the journey of rebuilding my self-value based on this love. I really do feel that the struggle every Brahmin has is to have love for themselves, every single one of us, because I think, 2,500 years of body consciousness and bhakti has cemented a profoundly deep sense of unworthiness. A lot of things change, but often this struggles to really transform. But I think Baba showed me a vision of who I really was. And I always feel, I sometimes ask myself, am I living in my old vision, the addiction to a limited vision, or am I living in God's vision on me? And, when it really came home to me also, once in 1980, I had been in New York with Didi Manmohini. And on the way back, I stopped in India. It's a long way, America to Australia via India. And I was in Madhavan, and we were having morning muli, and Dadiji was reading the muli. And all the senior sisters were there from around India, but there wasn't a scheduled meeting of Baba. And so Dadiji was reading the muli, and she kept saying, look, all Baba's lovely children are here. Baba should come and meet you. She kept saying it. At the end of the muli in the morning, she said, Gulzar, come. So Daddy Gulzar came up, she's so obedient, sat, and she went into trance, and Baba came. At the end of morning muli, Baba came. And you know what Baba said? Baba said, I haven't come to speak the muli. I've come to fulfill the love of the children. And I was sitting like 2 meters in front of Baba, right in front. This was in the meditation hall in Pandav Bhavan. And each one of the elder sisters came and they lay across Baba's lap. They lay in his lap. He held them. This is Avyak Bapdada. He held their face. He stroked their face, he stroked them and he held them. And what I realized is that Baba filled them with so much love, so much sense of their own value. It took them beyond their weaknesses, their impurity, their lack of self-respect. There's no doubt it was a journey, but it took them, they flew beyond this addiction to the limitation I hold about myself. And to me, that's the magic. And that's what I often do. If I feel a bit like you were asking, Manal, if I feel a bit lower or something hasn't gone so well, whatever, I try to sit in God's vision, in Baba's vision, and see how he sees me, because really that's the journey out of my old limited vision into God's vision. And, sometimes I say to myself that if I'm still stuck in my old limited addiction to this sort of vision on myself, have I really recognized who's teaching me? Have I really recognized? Because it's our duty. And I think that's what those like Daddy Janki, they stepped into that vision and they held that vision. I'm sure they had their own challenges along the way, but fundamentally they kept themselves in the drishti of God. And his drishti is on our beauty, on our original selves, on our soul conscious self, and so on.
Thank you for that, Charlie Pie. One question also that I did want to ask is regarding faith. And I know how you said that Baba was physically giving that love to the daddies and they're able to capture that love and experience it. How do you feel about potentially if we are at our lowest stages and we are feeling anxious and we are feeling stressed and we can't actually capture that love from Baba and we feel tested at that time, because really when we're at our lowest, that's when we should be most powerful?
You know, Benita, I think it's our right as Baba's child. It's our inheritance. And I think, as I was saying, it's not the love is always there. But I think we have to remove our own blocks of unworthiness to be able to accept that love and really step into Baba's drishti and open myself to that, because I think it's the confluence age still. Shiv Baba is still available. But there's a different reasons. I always feel there's a lack of soul consciousness because Baba's resonating on that frequency. And when I'm sort of in a lower state, I can't access perhaps that quality of love. And that's why really I think the more I sort of step up to Baba's wavelength, I often feel that Shiv Baba's on the FM dial. When I'm a bit body conscious, I'm on the AM dial. So it's more a belief, a theoretical belief that God's the ocean of love than the real tasting, feeling, absorbing. And that's where if I put myself into this soul conscious zone, then I can really feel it. And I've made a lot of attention to really becoming the bindi. That's one thing. But I suppose the catch-22 for most of us is that, you know, we want that love and we do love Shiv Baba. We experience that love, but we also are a bit entangled with human beings. That's all of us have been for a long, long time. And so I think that each time, you know, I remember Shiv Baba, I get an experience. But then when my intellect goes to a human being, it's like I reinforce those sanskaras. I give power back to my body conscious sanskaras, which sometimes doesn't allow me to access the unlimited ocean, maybe just a little bit of the ocean. And that's why it is a high destination. And I would say the most powerful point of spiritual knowledge is to have all relationships with one Shiv Baba. Because then I really sort of move up into Baba's zone. Each time I have a relationship or have a need from a human being, it sort of limits my capacity to absorb the ocean because I've connected in and I'm reinforcing my own body conscious sanskaras. And so that's really why I think, you know, the seed of really being able to experience that unlimited quality of love is to have all relationships with one. And I remember we asked Daddy G once, Daddy Prakashmani, Daddy, why did Baba make you the instrument when Brahma Baba left? And straight away she said, right from the beginning, I had one Shiv Baba and none other. And that wins Baba's trust. And that was really her experience, that when you really look to one, then I think your heart can be fully fulfilled. So it's like a prerequisite to the real love we're looking for is to really give my heart to one. And that's a high destination.
Yeah, it's it's really interesting hearing that, because something that comes to mind initially is the such variety of personalities that all the different daddies had and dadas, and like such a plethora of of souls all around, Brahma Baba and Mama. So they're so, even though we all share, and they shared a kind of core belief system, and maybe culturally there was a lot that was similar. They're all still unique personalities, and it's interesting to think that all of them, maybe to greater extent, had that in them, that one Shiv Baba and no other. And it'll be interesting to hear. I don't know if you've had any experiences of maybe some of the ancestor souls that we haven't met so often, and I'm sure you may have heard many stories of Mama and Didi and those souls who are around, but for not for the majority of us. Maybe we were too young, or we weren't born, or we hadn't come into Gyan yet. But it would be really interesting to hear, I don't know, the difference between the kind of love that exuded from someone like Didi, for example, and Mama, and maybe the kind of love that from people like, Nirumashanda Daddy and the Dadas. I don't know, you had a lot of first-hand experience with a lot of these souls, so it'd be interesting to hear the variety that comes from them all.
Yeah, thanks, Manal. I think that, when I was observing the meeting of Yak Bab Dada, and that came into my mind exactly what you were saying, that there were such different personalities. Some of them are quite sort of lively, you could say extrovert, some very quiet and introvert, and yet Shiv Baba Bab Dada's love was consistent. And I've really often thought about that the variety of personalities amongst the daddies was absolutely huge. For instance, Didi Manmohini, she was a very powerful personality, and her love, I think, manifested in an incredible power of yoga. In those days, if someone couldn't meditate, we'd sit them in front of Didi, and they really had, it's almost like her drishti lifted them out of the body and gave them an experience. So I really felt her love was a real yogi's love for Shiv Baba. And then there was like Daddy Prakashmani. Her love for Baba was similar, but I felt her love manifested in a love for the whole world. Her love was sort of for everybody. It's like the way she expressed her experience of Baba's love was to give that to everyone, almost unconditional. Daddy Ji's she would meet everyone with the drishti of belonging, the drishti of acceptance. I sometimes felt that she held the value of everyone in her drishti. And in a way, that's how she kept the whole yagya unified. And Brahma Baba too, by just holding the value in their drishti. And yet, Daddy Janki's love, the same in some ways too, but her love manifested this amazing ability to transform herself. I think her life was just this incredible sort of testimony to how God can take you and completely transform you if you give your heart to God. And so each one was expressive of love. Daddy Janki was so loving too, but Daddy G, Prakashmi, always seemed to be there from what I could see. She was always in the zone, but you could see that Daddy Janki was the one who really transformed her to step into that, who transformed herself to step into that zone. And Daddy Gozar, she just, in a way, her love just created this incredible purity. I think it's almost like she could only see Shiv Baba, and she was just so in love, that absolute purity where she's not pulled by anyone or anything. And so they all absorbed the ocean, but maybe it came out and is expressed in different ways through their unique personalities, which I just love. Because Baba's not making us clones. Baba's sort of his love works on our original personality and enhances that, purifies that.
It's also interesting when we talk about love, it kind of brings into the conversation this whole thing about faith that Benita mentioned earlier. And there's been so much access to the daddies over the years and the dadas, and whether we got to them personally or via seniors or even through classes. And one thing that I really just think is so profound, that the faith that they had is just imbues their personality, it imbues their body, it imbues their vocal tone, their language, and having had a lot of first-hand experience with these souls, I wonder if that faith was real and to what extent, or whether they were just being good leaders and just very good at covering up moments where they weren't so faithful. I think it's an interesting thing to ask, because sometimes it's quite easy to put them on a pedestal, and I feel it's better not to put them on a pedestal and see them for the effort that they've made to become who they are, and why Baba chose them in the first place. But I do wonder, were there times where you saw maybe a lack of faith in some of them, or if there was, then how did they deal with that? And maybe if there's experiences that you could share that could help the Brahmin family nowadays, because we're still all working on that element of faith.
Yes, I think that often we have faith based on belief. That's important, but they had faith based on belief and based on experience. And they're different things, really, because I can believe in Baba and believe in Baba's knowledge. That can create quite a powerful faith, but that faith, it doesn't really build the faith in the self as equal. I have faith in Baba and his truth. And often I feel we waver because we lose faith in ourselves, and that even affects my faith in Baba and the knowledge too. But what I feel is that the daddies had faith based on their experience. They lived with Sakar Baba. They saw him. And I think they saw over all those years that, they could have absolute faith in trust in Baba. Because I think, human beings have really lost faith and trust over half a cycle, to the point that many people find it incredibly difficult to trust. But what builds trust is keeping promises. Baba absolutely kept his promises. The second thing is walking our talk. When you see someone who is what they say, it builds trust, it builds faith. And Shiv Baba through Brahma Baba, Bap Dada, they were absolutely walking their talk. He was what he said. He was the embodiment of love, the embodiment of respect, etc. The third thing to build that trust is benevolence. Baba's absolutely benevolent and consistently benevolent. And so that is sort of growing the faith, growing the trust. They saw it, they lived it, they tasted it, they experienced it. And the final thing is really being so predictable. Baba was consistent. Human beings, they love you and sort of respect you for a week and then something changes, But Baba was absolutely predictable. So that sort of built that faith and trust in those original souls. And I can perhaps pick up your thought, well, what about us? I still feel it's the same. I feel when I took birth, I think I developed faith. I don't think my faith is shaken because my experience, through my Brahmin life is observing not just Bap Dada, but the daddies too. I've experienced that through the daddies as well. That they have been they've kept their promises, they've remained benevolent, they've walked their talk, and they're consistent. And it's built up my faith as well. And I think that that's really supported me on my journey with Baba.
Just an interesting observation, actually, Charlie Pai. Obviously, technology is absolutely brilliant, which is why we've been able to connect today. But do you feel like sometimes we are over-resourced? Because obviously now we have the Mulli, obviously on our phones, on our computers, we have classes all the time. And obviously in the olden days, they didn't have that. And I feel like because of that, maybe the daddies and the ancestor souls were able to connect that much more because they weren't overly resourced and resources were very scarce in those times.
I think that's incredibly true, Benita, because we live in this culture of distraction. And I think there's deep reasons. This incredible culture of distraction distracts us from looking really deep who I am, because it's a form of avoidance or denial, because I think at the beginning of the yajna, we were living sort of naked with ourselves. There wasn't so much distraction of the world. They just lived with each other. And, to really see deeply who I am is just so fundamental to this journey, and having this honesty to see who I am. And I think that really in silence, it's like a mirror, and I see who I am. And it's not to feel hopeless, but that's the challenge of the journey. And I feel in the beginning of the yajna, the legacy was that period of love, that period of silence, that period of yoga where the soul's almost stripped back and I see who I am, but I see the original self. I often feel, we talk about blind spots. We are often blind to who I really am and my weaknesses, but our universal blindness is to our beauty. And I feel really when you sit in silence, and of course the rubbish of the past can come up, but actually I taste the original beauty of my set of sanskaras that are still in me from the golden age. They are still there. And once my intellect begins to access them, I can do it now in this 2021. It is still the same process, I believe, but there is this incredible culture of busyness, distraction, and noise. And it's all a culture which distracts me from my truth. And sometimes I think even as Brahmins, we're distracted service and all the paraphernalia of service can distract me from the real purpose of this life, to really be absolutely in love with God. This is the only time in eternity, and know myself deeply as I truly am. The beginning of the Yajna created that culture, and I honestly believe we're going to revert to that culture very soon, because there may not be a lot we can do externally, and we will realize that time is really short. In fact, many, I think, of us are really realizing, and we're going to go into this cocoon of one Baba and this cocoon of self-realization. I mean, that's my vision of where we're going.
It's interesting because I wonder what the experience is like for those new Brahmins who have only come to Baba in the last year, and maybe have, feel as though they missed out on a lot. But I just feel I feel partly privileged, but also it feels like a gift that we can give to the family, whether they're souls that have been around for 50 years, 40 years, or even like 3 months. They didn't get to meet anyone. They haven't been to Madhaban. And I think it's so nice to be able to offer this conversation and offer these stories to those souls as well, and make them feel as though they've not just come at the tail end of something, but they're really benefiting, and they really have the time to do what they need to do and to achieve what they want to achieve. And something as you were speaking that came to mind was how much we cannot speak about love. We just have to experience it through the personalities, whether we met those personalities or not, but we just experience it. And same with Baba. And as you're speaking, it's really hitting home for me. I don't know for Benita if it's doing the same for you, but it's really reminding me that I really have to live this personality of love, rather than to think too much about even taking from Baba anymore, because Baba's been giving and will never stop giving until I've taken enough.
It's so true, Manal, because I think what I've taken from this legacy of love is that this is the legacy of, Bap Dada and then the daddies. And you remember, because you experienced Daddy Janki, and how aware was she of passing on the feelings she had, the experiences she had. And I think that's our responsibility. That's really our responsibility too, to sort of, it's not just the information flow, it's more the bhavna and the feelings. And I think when the soul really absorbs in the ocean of love, it sits here and it radiates through the face, it radiates through the eyes, it radiates through the vibrations. To me, this is really the service, because I love everything natural. And I think spirituality is absolutely natural. The most natural thing in life is to fall in love. It's in our DNA to fall in love. Now we're now falling in love with the one who's incorporeal, egoless, and viceless. And when I can really get that, then I will naturally remember him. I will naturally, it won't be like I should, I must, I will naturally remember him. And when I naturally remember, I naturally transform, the healing process really begins. The love unlocks that feeling. And when I naturally transform, I naturally serve. Through my face, through my vibes, through my energy, I pass on the legacy of this incredible yagya that Shiv Baba has created. And, that's where I feel if we become instruments also to help those who are just starting. And I feel that Shiv Baba is wonderful. He offers the whole package to every child. Whether they've started 80 plus years ago or even now, then it's up to us. If I really have the courage to step into a relationship with one Shiv Baba and really I feel the daddies had this culture based on two sanskaras, one Baba and none other, and, Baba, nothing is mine, everything is yours. So that whole sort of I and my, dependence is removed. And I think that creates the culture that keeps holding this beautiful energy of love that has imbued this yagya for 80 plus years.
So, Charlie Pie, do you think we need to love ourselves first and then love God? Or do you think we need to love God first and then love ourselves?
We need to love God first. And that's the door that opens my self-respect. That's what I really believe. I once had a conversation with Brother Ken, and we were saying, you can go to the bookshops these days, all the New Age bookshops, psychology bookshops. There's a million books about growing self-esteem, growing self-love, growing self-respect. And we felt the main truth that's going to unlock that beauty, the sleeping beauty inside all of us, is God's love. That's the key that turns it. And that's where I've got to learn how, even though I'm impure, to make myself open to taste that love. Because often in bhakti, the idea is, become pure and you can know God. So you start from that low place. But Gyan is know God and love God, and that makes you pure. That rebuilds your self-value. So I really think it's all about educating myself how to really fall in love with the one who's incorporeal, egoless and viceless. He's real. He's there. He's present. It's not a concept or an intellectual belief. And when I really make Baba my lover, that's my language. I feel Baba's my lover. And then I think the sense of who you are, it just automatically begins to shift because you step more into Baba's vision. Baba's love is the healing of this dysfunctional relationship with myself. It's God's love, which is the most powerful thing.
As time is running on, moving on to, I think one of our final kind of strands that we wanted to touch upon. And it's about this balance between trying to strike the perfect balance between being inspired by the ancestor souls and looking back at what they've done and what they've said, and how they've behaved and all those things. But also, receiving Baba's Murli every day, every morning, fresh, and feeling rejuvenated by that and wanting to dive into that a lot. But then also trusting our own instincts and our own experiences. What do you feel is a good balance to try and strike? Especially, I think, even in the BK world, in the Brahmin world, there is so much output happening. I find, if I wanted to listen to a class now in the last 6 months or so, I could find one from every country in the world that I could listen to, and so many people are sharing. I think it's incredible, but I think in a way I feel as though it could be a bit overwhelming, I just want to sit on my own and sit with Baba at times and not listen to too much. So I think it's a question of how, where do we strike the balance between input and output, I guess, our own output, and our own instincts versus what Baba's saying to us in the Murli, versus all of those incredible classes and stuff that we hear from our ancestors.
I remember once Didi Manmohini said, what's the difference between, you could probably say those seniors, the daddies, and a lot of the great sannyasis, because there's been some really elevated souls on the path of devotion. And she said the main thing is that the daddies don't accept the sort of the praise and the worship from others. So they don't make themselves into gurus, and they've kept that humility. And so they became wonderful examples. They're examples in front of us. They're not there for us to sort of adore. They want us to step up into our own self-value too. And I think that, that's really what Baba is teaching. Baba's not teaching us to worship him. He's teaching us to step back into our own individual power. And that's the absolute humility of God. And I think that the daily Murli, the way I see it these days is that it's like the soul who's never influenced, the soul who's eternally pure, the soul who's never adulterated, has never a distorted vision in any way from truth, holds 100% truth, is sort of sharing his perspective on how to see each and every aspect of life. And I think if I step into that zone and sort of try to wear the glasses that Baba wears, because I often feel we can listen to the Murli and store it intellectually in my intellect, but I don't store it in my heart and my feelings so that I don't live it in a way. It's more of a head trip than a real life experience. And this is really, to me, that if I really listen to the Murli in a soul-conscious way, when I began, we were taught the teacher is soul-conscious. The way that it hits deeply is when I listen in a soul-conscious state. I think we've all had the experience. You can listen to the Murli and you like it, but it's a bit ordinary because it's not the Murli, it's me. I'm in an ordinary state of being. But when I'm in a soul-conscious state, it's absolutely magic. And then God tells us how he sees death, how he sees relationships, how he sees time, how he sees everything. And I just find it absolutely extraordinary. Till this day, we can equally absorb it on the level that the teacher has spoken it and make it relevant to our lives. That's our task, Shiv Baba taught it in the 1930s in Karachi, and Brahma Baba made it palatable to society at that time. Even I think when Daddy Janki came to the West, she and Gentiben started to make it palatable to the sort of intellects, retaining the truth and making it palatable. And that's what we have to do too. We're living in a time where we have to, extract that purity of truth into our lives and make it palatable and accessible for people who think and are experiencing life like me at the moment. I think it's absolutely possible. And that's, in a sense, our legacy too. to spread this love and try to make God's truth accessible for the sort of people living, in our contemporary world at the moment.
I think you've made a really interesting point there, that we really need to be as soul conscious as we can and step into that soul conscious zone. And when we are listening to the Murli, we need to not only listen with our heads, but also with our hearts and our souls. And similarly, when we are sitting in Amrit Vela and 7 to 7:30 meditation, it really needs to be from the heart and the soul. Thank you so much, Charlie Pai, for your wonderful experiences, your wise words of wisdom, and your time. We truly feel honoured to have you here. And on behalf of myself and Minal, we really appreciate all of your time. So I'd very much appreciate if we can end this session with a short meditation commentary from yourself.
I'd just like to thank you, Benita, and Manal. It's been so lovely talking about such rich things, and I'd like to invite everyone to put down devices and just for a few moments become an instrument of the legacy of love. Baba descends at the end of the cycle into the body of Brahma Baba and expresses a purity of love that the world has not seen for a whole cycle. We as his children sit in front of Shiv Baba, and it's my right as a child to taste this purity of love. For half a cycle, I've only known human love, limited love, love based on dependence. But now I've found the love I've been searching for. And so let me sit in front of Bapdada's Drishti. See this divine love radiating through the eyes. And allow myself to be completely loved. Just open my heart and have the feeling that I am worthy to be loved. Baba has adopted me, and he truly loves me. And feeling this stream of divine love caressing the core of my being. Feel your whole inner world cooling and calming. And when I feel so loved, experience how you feel. I feel better about who I am. My self-respect begins to grow. And the true healing has begun. The healing of the damaged relationship with myself. If each morning I sit become a small child. Open my heart to the ocean and absorb this divine love into the core of my being. I am continuing the legacy of love. As I go about my life in a natural way, this love will radiate through my face, through my eyes, and through my vibrations. This is carrying forward the legacy of the original yajna, to become an instrument of Baba's love. Om Shanti.
Thank you to Charlie Bai, and what a beautiful way to end our time together. Thanks for sharing so honestly and beautifully your experiences and your dharma and things with us. And we hope that everyone is enjoying the Living the Legacy of Love and continues to enjoy them every day, and it provides you with a real beautiful feeling of the love that we've been exploring today. So until next time, and Om Shanti.
Living the legacy of love.